everybody. Happy Friday. It is Friday morning coffee and conversation with me, Jen Snow, clinical hypnotherapist, soul regression coach, Reiki master, energy healer. And we are going to talk today. We're going to have some coffee and some conversation. And because it's Friday and we do our Friday mornings a little more cash, the puppies will be in and out of the room because Walker, well, he has FOMO. He has FOMO big time. And so he likes to participate in the best way he knows how. But it's always kind of funny because he'll come in and then he'll like say hi in the beginning and then he'll kind of like disappear. So you're going to see a puppy coming in and out. And that's why I've got the door open to the office so that they can. And then Kona's holding space on the other side of the door is actually where she kind of always plays when I'm working. She likes to lay on that other side and just participate on the energetic side. She really does like to be involved. So good morning, everybody. Cheers. And hopefully you've got that cup of coffee, that warm cup of lemon water, tea, whichever you get your started morning with. And let's have a great conversation because today is going to be about story time. We're going to talk about past life regression and some of my client stories that I have absolute permission to share with you. Good morning, Alice. Good morning, everybody on Instagram, on TikTok. I hope that you guys are having a great day. I have these permission to talk about these stories because there's some really great events that have happened, some really powerful healing that have happened through the past life regression that connected to generation legacy and ancestral healing. And so it was really interesting. And I'm going to share the very first time that I ever had a client go back to a incarnation that they were not physically a part of. That was their lineage, their legacy, and how we worked through that healing, but what it meant for the client. So for all intensive purposes, I'm going to refer to this client. And again, this is a pseudonym, so it's not their actual name, but Sarah. We're going to talk because it just, instead of just saying client, I'm just going to give them a name and it's Sarah. So that's what we're going with today. And I'm sure that person who, when they see this, they're going to giggle. So, generational legacy and ancestral healing. For those of you, we've often heard, and we've seen it here on all of our social media about being the black sheep in the family or the black wolf, the one who comes in and integrates into a lineage that has the capacity and the journey, and part of their soul purpose is unwinding the cycles, the patterns of limited belief systems, emotional wounds, trauma, events, situations. For some, some refer to it as curses, and it just all depends on what your lineage experienced and how we interpreted it, how we perceived it. So those of us who have come into certain generations, certain families, that is part of our role, is to help unwind that so that the generations moving forward are not stuck in those cycles and those patterns, that those cycles and patterns have been unwound unless, and this is the unless part, is if the soul chooses to tap into that cell memory themselves, but breaking it as a general connection and thread and frequency and vibration in that lineage. And I myself have done that for a lot of aspects for my family. Not that I was intending on it, but I realized the connections and the cycles and the patterns. And I do look forward to seeing how that unwinds everything as we go forward. So hello, Alex. How are you doing? And it's an interesting process because, we've gone back and we've personally unwound things in past lives. There's a lot of cycles and patterns, belief systems, ideas, perceptions, events, situations, cords, imprints, energies that we have experienced, that we have encountered in these alternate incarnations. And we do in our present incarnation sometimes have events that feel very similar to an event that once was, and we end up getting, triggered. And as we get triggered, that belief system, that understanding, those feelings all come rushing back. And it usually happens in the subconscious mind, in the subconscious space, and it comes out through our conscious, our external environment, and the way we perceive ourselves and the way we perceive the environment, and how we interact with our environment and ourselves, and how we coach ourselves. And so that's why you'll see in hypnotherapy so many people beginning to regress back to the root cause or the origin of a belief system, of a pattern, of a cycle that actually originates in another incarnation. And as we unwind that incarnation, it then unwinds it in the present incarnation, so that as that alternate incarnation is released and the events of that incarnation, the emotions, the situations, the conversation, the impact of that incarnation is unwound and let go, we actually release that in our mindset, in our internal landscape, in our present incarnation, as we come back into the conscious space, as we come back into the physical body and here and the now, and we begin to move forward, we begin to see and feel differently. Not that we can always go back and access that as a tool to look at, but we're not living from it. It's not a part of our everyday thought pattern or perceptions or ideas or actions and reactions. And so the past lives have been such an intricate thing in my own healing, but also I seem to, in my clients' healing. And so what one of the most interesting and curious events that we hadn't actually been trained on. So for those of you who maybe know who I am, or for those of you who are new to the channel or new to following and being a part of my Instagram and my TikTok, I have intuitive abilities and my mediumship abilities. I spent a long time denying and burying for, my own personal reasons. And since unwinding all of those reasons, because you can only bury things for so long before it actually starts to rear its head and be like, hello, it's time. You can't run anymore. And we're going to make it impossible for you to run. But you can keep trying if you choose. I just got to the point where I decided chose not to, because it was more work choosing to run than it was to face why I was denying it. And I didn't always believe that. I really did feel the capacity to fear my abilities was so strong that I never thought I would actually open them up again. And then events start to happen where they were just naturally beginning to open up, even though it was causing such an inner conflict in my own being. I was constantly struggling with the fight of tapping into what once was, and really not sure that I wanted to share that with the world or myself, to be honest with you, because I didn't trust it. I didn't trust what I would do with it, because I've had, a very impactful past life where I had multiple intuitive capacities and abilities and understandings and knowledge, and I didn't use it well. I used it unwell, actually, very unwell. And it took a lot of working through that past life to really begin to open up the possibility to being open, to tapping in and living and breathing from those abilities that were innate within me. Since that, though, looking back on the time, I don't have any regrets around it, because it taught me a lot. And it really did show me that I could begin to trust. But the unwinding of past events has really helped me move forward. And so, I do tend to find clients that experience, alternate incarnations where they need to unwind and let go of certain things that are blocking them from moving forward in their full potential and the full capacity in this present incarnation. And as we unwind those moments begin to reshape into a positive side. So we talk about the shadow and bringing the shadow back to light, because in my belief system, in my sense, is that these shadow pieces are just parts of our whole soul that have forgotten that they were light, and they've gotten stuck in an event. And that event is, they're stuck in the past, they're frozen, and they're living from that frozen space versus the space of where they could be back reunited in self, oneness and wholeness, in their true vibration frequency, not the vibration, not the emotion, not the frequency, and the event and the moment, the impact moment where they got frozen. So as we unwind those shadow pieces, they actually do begin to illuminate back into the light source that, in my opinion, we all come from. And So legacy, generational healing, ancestral healing. It's very interesting because my first experience with this, well, somebody was in the chair. Okay, Sarah. Um, she came in because she was just feeling very unworthy, had a lot going on that was really positive, but could never truly accept it, never really allow herself to stretch into it and own it and live and believe that she was worthy of all the beautiful things that she was creating and the abundance that was coming to her, and abundance in her capacity to cultivate her inner power to manifest what it is that she wanted actually comes to her so naturally, so easily, that it's really quite effortless for her to be a master, a manifester. And those are her building blocks. Like those are a part of her journey. Yet that journey, those building blocks were tied to this feeling of unworthiness. And it constantly was an inner conflict and a limited belief system that was interfering with her ability to step into her flow fully. I mean, she danced with it, she would work with it. I mean, but she would have this constant conversation and story going on in her inner mind that she didn't deserve it. Even though it was right there in front of her, it was right there happening with her, for her, that she couldn't truly accept it. And it brought her a lot of turmoil, even though, like, again, she was manifesting quite easily, quite effortlessly. It was just very simple for her. But the whole time, as these great and wonderful things were happening, it was like a part of her, she put it, the happiness portion of getting everything she'd been working for and it coming to her, so like coming to her in flow, made her feel worse about herself. And so she came to me and she wanted to work on the feeling of unworthiness, the cycle of unworthiness, the block of unworthiness that she constantly was fighting, that wall she kept climbing, but she could never get over the hump. Like she would just get close to the top and start to enjoy it, and boom, it would come back to her and it would hit her hard. So we decided to follow the part of her that felt unworthy. And when we asked that part to take her back to the very first time that it came to be with her, to the origins, the root cause, she ended up going back into a past incarnation. And when she got there, she was remote viewing. And as she was remote viewing, she, and we had done a couple of sessions already, and she just kept saying, I don't feel like this is me though. Like I can see it, I understand it, but I don't feel like I'm dropping into it. Now she was a first person. She used to drop her journeys were seeing through her full regression, seeing through her own eyes. And so we went back to childhood, and we walked, we were like watched the entire life. And as we're moving through the life, she began to recognize people in her family. She goes, oh, that's my mom, that's my, and started to recognize people in her generation. And her great grandmother, because she had seen a picture, but she recognized through the eyes. And I go, okay, so what does this life mean to you? She's like, this isn't my life, but this is my legacy. This is my generation. Like, these are my ancestors. And I'm like, oh, okay. So tapping into the medium side of me, I was like, okay, so what questions do I need to ask here? Let's ask her higher self. And so when we got to the end of the past life, as we watched through it, like watching a movie, I said, what is the purpose of this life? What was the purposes of us coming back to this life? And because you're in your higher space, your higher wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, that should come to you clearly and easily now. And as it did, it dawned, like she came like instantly forward with the fact that this is where that thread and vibration, that frequency, those belief systems, those emotional wounds, those conflicts of worthiness happened for her generation, where it got imprinted upon the generation so directly that it became a part of the cell memory. And anyone who was a part of this generation, I said, okay, so do you get a sense of how we could unwind that unworthiness? And we ended up having to pull in the souls that were a part of that incarnation and bringing their higher selves in on both sides, the souls that were a part of creating or the foundation of, the two sides, the two families, and how everybody who was a part of the event, the impact event. And some of those people were not family members. So all the souls came in and we ended up communicating and connecting with them. And we asked them what they needed to feel differently and to unwind this moment. And so there was a lot of forgiveness and healing and understanding that went back and forth between these two souls, and Sarah and her higher self ended up just watching all of this until the process was complete. And because Sarah was the tangible physical component to this generation, we were able to download that information into the physical cellular being for everybody in a part of this lineage. And once this process was complete, and then we went through our soul screening out, the events of that life. And once the healing was done, and the other souls there was like this beautiful moment where everybody came back to light, everybody came to harmony, everybody was like, good, thank you. And there was a lot of celebration that this cycle, this pattern had been unwound and released and dissolved, so that everybody in that generation could move forward now. That whether they came into the same family or not, they could move forward free of, and actually none of those souls had incarnated yet into a present incarnation. So it was really interesting that they got to do the healing through the person in their lineage, and that would transmute to when they decided to reincarnate. And so bringing Sarah through that, we actually worked through her belief systems, the ones that she felt she had imprinted upon her, that continued to create the wall. And as we moved through, her wall of unworthiness began to crumble away. And by the time we ended up screening, there was nothing left of that imprint, that energy, that those belief systems, those actions, those reactions, habits, behaviors, cycles, patterns that were built around unworthiness left within her. And she was actually able to move forward, leaving that lifetime behind, even though she hadn't been there or been a part of it. But she was the incarnated component person who was able to help release that inner conflict, that inner event. And so as we came forward and she came back into the present, before we came back, as we kind of hovered above, I said, is there something that, is there a soul piece of you that you want to bring back with you? And we actually brought back a piece of her soul that ended up being a part of the collective of that generation, that understood, that trust, and knew that they were always worthy to receive and worthy to have and create a life of fulfillment. And it was fulfillment and contentment. And those were the words that were used. And we did ask, what does fulfillment and contentment mean to you? Living a life that, was everything that you wanted to be, both inside and out, outside and in, but starting to cultivate that and create that from the inside and letting the light within you shine through. So when we came out of that session, there was a lot of tears. I was very emotional for Sarah. And she really was just like, came out and was a sigh of relief. And I remember that feeling of relief just kind of reverberating through the room and the energy in the room, and how it was like, oh, thank God that's done. Like, thank God I have let this go. And so Sarah and I kind of touched base about a week later, and she sent me a message, and that message was really kind of cool because she said to me, I've been creating wonderful and beautiful things, and I've never once allowed myself to celebrate or enjoy those moments and feel the happiness of what I've worked so hard to build and have and share with the world. And now she was moving forward and she could just feel the excitement. So the inner conflict actually transmuted for her into excitement of the moment, excitement and joy of what was about to come and what she was working towards and what that would mean for her. But her capacity now to enjoy it was so much stronger, and it has grown over the couple years that we've kept in touch. And it's just really kind of neat to see how sometimes it's not our events in our cellular makeup that is creating conflict, cycles, and patterns. It sometimes has to do with our generational legacies and our ancestors. And we have the capacity, if we so choose, to unwind them bit by bit, moment by moment. So if you end up doing your own work, and the reason I want to talk about that's because sometimes we end up, a lot of us do a lot of work on our own. I do a lot of work on my own, and then I'm like, okay, I need to be the client here. So I need to just sit here, do nothing, be the guy, be in the chair. As you guys have seen, we've done this live. Like, sometimes I just have to be that in that space, and that's okay. But I do know, like, we all can do a lot of work on our own. But if you end up in a life or an incarnation that you're like, yeah, that's not mine, ask yourself, what's the purpose of this incarnation? And let that information come to you. And if it's it's not your incarnation, but you're a part of that legacy somehow, and you have the capacity to unwind that right then and there, so that not only you free yourself of that inner conflict and those cycles and those patterns, but you also hold space for the souls involved in that incarnation to do the healing work that they need to do, and allowing them to free themselves of the imprinted patterns, cycles, and inner conflicts, wounds, emotional wounds, burdens, weights that they might care for in their next incarnation. And so I just wanted to share that with you, that sometimes it's not our incarnations that are creating conflict for us. It is our generational, and we have the power, if you so choose, to follow those. And it's just as easy to unwind as if it was your own experience. So that is coffee and conversation this morning. Past lives are very interesting. And I thought as we go forward with morning coffee and conversation, we will continue to talk about some of the events and stories and situations and sessions that I've had to share with you, to see, because there's a lot out there. There's a lot of reasons why we stay stuck. Sometimes it's from our present incarnation. Sometimes it's not, but we can move, we can cross the time barrier and go experience and unwind and release and let go. Things that maybe necessarily aren't meant to be a part of this incarnation, but somehow have got activated because a tangible feeling and emotion that resonates with that incarnation and how familiar it is. We draw our experience and we bring it in and we activate it. So sometimes unwinding it and placing it back into the Akashic records or a record space where it's a record that we can observe and witness, but it's not one that we have to relive. So it can be a very powerful healing tool. And it can really begin to open up the next step of your journey. And sometimes it's just revealing what the next wall is for you. Sometimes it's the completion of a cycle or a pattern or a belief system that no longer serves your highest and greatest good, that no longer aligns with your soul purpose. And unwind and, going through that and allowing yourself to make that decision to no longer harbor and hold that inner conflict or those belief systems or those cycles can begin to help us spread our wings and fly a little bit higher and a little more freely. So, all right, guys, for those of you who may be like, hey, I want to give this a try, but I'm not really sure, I do offer a free discovery call at blendedconnections.com. Send me a DM and I can send you the link and we can get a call set up. If you're like, yeah, one-on-one's a little too intense for me. Yeah. Because some people say that it's just like too much focus on me. I do offer group classes, Tuesday night classes, and there's more group and workshops coming. Oh my God, it is September. So over the next month and 2 months. And so if a group class, you want to give something a try, but you're like, hey, the one thing about group classes are, because of my medium, I do get to kind of plug into everybody individually and as a group, as a collective. However, they are set up so that you can go on the journey. But first, like, if you're like me, who just listens back to some of my guided hypnosis group classes, because I'm like, oh, I really like that one, I'm going to do that one myself. I don't always follow my information. I don't always follow my guidance, but I do end up going on a journey, and I know that that's what I need in the moment. And the guided information was just the tool that I needed to get to where I needed to go. So if that's something that you have fear around, you are not expected to follow me step by step. If you end up in a journey, just know that your higher self, your spirit and soul team, they're guiding you there. They've got you. You could go where you need to go. And then when you're ready, you come back and you be a part of the flow, but you're always in flow. And that's perfectly fine. It's not, somebody said, you take that offensively. I'm like, no, I do it to myself. So it's perfect. And if the Group class is just a gateway to get you where you need to go so you can unwind those conflicts, those inner barriers, those blocks, those cycles, those patterns, those emotional wounds. That's perfect. If you don't like the staircase, don't go down the staircase. Use a path. But they're just positive suggestions to help you get into that deep space of connection and into that inner awareness. So, all right, guys, I hope that you have an amazing and fantastic and lovely weekend. We will be live next Wednesday for another past life meditation. I haven't decided on the topic yet, but it's coming. I'm going to let it, I think I have some ideas. I'm just trying to not squirrel on all of them. So I got to write them down so that we can come up with a weekly pattern. So those of you who haven't subscribed or haven't hit the like button yet, please go ahead. If you come to YouTube, it will notify you when we're going live. I will be doing as much live all of the channels as we possibly can. Still working out the technical side, but it's kind of been a fun learning curve. So, all right, guys, have a great day. Cheers and happy Friday. Do, do, do.